I would point out several things, and that is that we, in our society, in some cases, will blindly accept without reservation or without investigation certain kinds of science that tends to oblige our biases. And yet in other areas we will systematically deny the science when it doesn't suit our biases. We are, as a civilization, facing one of the most difficult open book tests that our society and our civilization has ever faced. We can use books, we can work with our friends, we can compare our answers, we can do all those things, and in fact, in order to score well, we will need to do all of those things, that our society needs to be at its very best. And by the way, the folks who will grade our work product in this test will be our children and our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren. And if we do not do our job, then the longer we delay, the longer we deny, then it means that necessarily the rate and the severity of the changes necessary in the future become increasingly stringent and difficult. So it is, as change goes, a lot better, a lot more productive, a lot more constructive to make lots of incremental changes that are doable than to not act and then require massive and huge changes too late. An example of that, as we have been doing and reviewing the research and the data, is that as you look at the impact of changing climate, is that in the northern part of our continent, we're going to be to the point where, as the ice patterns change, we'll be releasing methane from bogs, which is then 23 times more adverse to the global warming gases than is carbon dioxide. And so we can make a bad situation much worse by waiting. We also have the tools before us in order to very cost effectively and constructively and proactively engage agriculture, forestry, industry, and a lot of others to help sequester the carbon that is already in the atmosphere in a constructive way. And so our goal has been to get out in front of, so that agriculture, who will take the brunt of a lot of the climate and weather-related changes and impacts as our livestock and our crop production goes forward, we also want to be able to be in a place where we use agriculture constructively. And to the extent that we have given agriculture in Nebraska the opportunity to do that, when we were back in the 2005, 6, 7, and 8 eras, as we were anticipating a cap and trade system at the national level, that our state led the nation, or was second, depending on whether you counted acres or tons of sequestered carbon, by our farmers voluntarily participating in the sequestration of carbon from the atmosphere through using sound conservation practices and cultural practices, and that when given the chance, we have constructively engaged. And with that, I would be more than glad to have the speakers come up and be open to any or all questions that you might have.
So are you talking about cap and trade?
When as we were anticipating that the U.S. would modify the EU cap and trade system, and make it include ag and make it more user-friendly and more flexible, which the House of Representatives did, the Senate did not, but in the run-up to that, there was a voluntary cap and trade system already in place that was being used on the Chicago Climate Exchange. And businesses were participating, ag was participating, we were already moving forward, and unfortunately, when we got to that critical point in time, the Senate did not move forward with cap and trade. They didn't make any of the adjustments to make it even more user-friendly than the House did. And then, even more tragically, if you're not going to do cap and trade, which the rest of the industrialized world was using to deal with carbon emission issues, then as the leader of the industrialized world, what was the United States to do? And what the United States did was nothing. We came up with no other better alternative system. Our fear in ag is that what will be on the table will end up being more heavy-handed penalties for carbon emissions, and yet with no real positive upsides for sequestering carbon. So, choosing our options, we thought cap and trade was more market-oriented. It came out of a Republican administration. It had been used in the U.S. before on critical issues before in 2 cases that were successful. And so we had already used it. It was less costly. It was more market-oriented. It was more flexible. And unfortunately, the Senate caved into special interest and really did nothing. And so right now, the United States, one of the true leaders in the world in terms of not only opinion but industry, but also in carbon emissions, is doing nothing. And so we're not working with the rest of the world community to come up with an alternative solution. And so the United States needs to come to grips, and we need to do something. And so that's hopefully why we elect leaders who will come to grips. The American people, as usual, are well ahead of our politicians. They not only wonder why Congress can't pass the Farm Bill, they also wonder why they can't get off their duff and do something about climate change.